I think Ryan Staten originally is maybe who mentioned my name to you guys on the call. Obviously, I know Tyler and Bill well, but for the rest of you, I think, are you guys in a study group with Ryan? Is that what it is? You guys kind of get together periodically and share ideas and best practices and whatnot?
Yeah, that's essentially it, Josh. We appreciate you joining. We've been kind of doing this for just over a year now and kind of just
Okay.
connecting on various topics on a monthly basis about like kind of what we're seeing from a trend standpoint, both from a service, but also on the sales side of things.
Yep.
And kind of this stemmed from the RPAG and Wilmington Trust news a month or so ago of just kind of obviously recognizing from a planned service standpoint for retirement plans, there isn't a lot out there from a service structure standpoint.
Yep.
So kind of just a lot of us on the call are RPAG, not everybody is. So kind of just exploring options, seeing what we can do,
Yep.
and just trying to see what else is out there. Obviously not fully married to RPAG. We're all, I think, in a good spot. So we just felt like it would have been timely to just kind of
I'm
see.
sure there's one or two of you that are cult members on this call. I'm sure one or two of you are cult members.
Nate's not on the call yet. He usually jumps in a little bit.
Okay.
He's up there for them, but he's
All right.
also
All right.
if you know Nate at all, he'll hold you accountable for what you say and do, obviously. So he's probably one of the leaders of the cult, but also one that they don't love at the same time.
Well, I don't know Nate. I don't think so. Yeah. So when I talk to kind of Ryan and whatnot, and you guys are young guys. I love the next gen. I just turned 50, so I'm like an old guy in the industry now. But like real quick, kind of my background was in 2004, my best friend and I left wirehouses and started a fee-only RIA called Greenspring Advisors. We started all wealth. We had about 15 million bucks between the two of us. Very meager beginnings. But over the next 17 years, we built $1 billion wealth practice. And I launched in 2006. I kind of stumbled into 401k, but built almost a $5 billion 401k practice. So we had kind of these. So I sat in your seat, and ironically, and I would say a lot of times when you hear like, RPAG, or there's not great fintech in the retirement space. I always laugh, like on the wealth side, even back in the day, I used to say to like my wealth members, like team members, I'm like, you guys get to play with like the cool toys. You get like the PlayStation 5, the Xbox. I'm like, on the retirement side, we play with like slinkies on like the steps. You guys are probably too young to remember what slinkies were, but like when I was a kid, like literally I'd do a slinky down the steps. And so, I was a longtime FI360 user. Through that acquisition of Todd's group, he actually had a subscription to RPAG. I used that for a period of time. I stopped using it, and there was a very specific reason why I did. But, I would say there's not great kind of like modern fintech that's out there. I think RPAG was great. And frankly, I have about 125 advisory teams around the country that use my platform, and probably 50% or more are RPAG users. So I think that would be one of my other pieces of advice. Every advisor wants the kind of like Swiss Army knife that does everything on the fintech side. I'm trying to build that. We've done a lot of really cool stuff. I think there's a lot of buzz around kind of our platform. We have some overlap with RPAG. We do some things that RPAG doesn't do, and then there's some things that kind of we both do. I have probably 45% of my client base are FI360 users, though that's going up because we just launched an integration with them. That's pretty slick. The other half are RPAG's users. And so that would be my advice as you're thinking about fintech. Doesn't necessarily need to be an all or nothing, like, hey, it's just one thing that does everything. It's really about, as I was building my practice, when there were tools that did what I wanted, it was, trust me, way cheaper and more efficient to license those tools. But as I was building my practice, I was trying to solve problems that there were not tools that were out there. And so my platform originally, I built internally in 2011 for my own purposes. I came up with the idea, I hired a developer, they built it for me. And then we used it to, for our client base. And it was really valuable in terms of like, helping us grow and helping us really demonstrate value. When I sold, I decided, a little midlife crisis, in 2021, I love building tech. I love working with advisors. I love working with the next gen, frankly. Guys my age, they're all my friends. They suck to work with because they're very set in their ways, and this is the way we've always done it. And I would say in general, advisory firms, especially on the retirement side, in my opinion, there's a trope that the industry is like retirement is way less profitable. It's true, but it shouldn't be. The reason it's not profitable is because they're not as profitable as wealth is because there's not a lot of great tool platforms out there. And I would tell you in general, advisors don't use technology really, really efficiently. And so there's a lot of like custom and everything's kind of like a one-off and bespoke. And that would be my biggest advice to you as you guys are building your practices. It's really about you have to really think systematically about your business and you have to build systems that scale. The other thing I would tell you is that I find now working with a lot of advisors that a lot of advisors, and I'll show you some elements. I won't give you a full deep dive on my platform, but I do think a show is always better than a tell. And I will show you, some of the key elements. If you want to see more after this, we can set up a time. I can do that individually with you. But I just want to kind of give you a vision of how you can create systematic and efficient scale. What I see with a lot of advisors that they do is if you think about like a 4x4 matrix, and Tyler, I apologize, I'm not a big like slides and walk you through, like I like having conversations.
Absolutely.
But if you think about a 2x2 matrix and you think about, high effort or low effort, high effort, low value, high value, right? That's how I always thought about my practice. I think a lot of advisors spend a majority of time in high effort, low value, or high effort, high value, or low effort, low value activities. Even talking about things with clients, you really should be trying to spend 80% of your time in that low effort, high value. They're the art, I would just say. And again, I sat in your seat and I built a pretty mega practice. I was always trying to think about how do I not just convey information, because I think a lot of advisors we overwhelm with information, 80-page decks that frankly, nobody gets past page 4. I actually run advisor RFPs in the large market now. I usually run about 6 to 8. I just did one 2 weeks ago for a $250 million plan, law firm, creative planning, Cap Trust, and Hub, like well-known advisors were in there. They were all good, but I will tell you, nobody's doing too much that's super innovative. Like literally after everybody presented, they were all good, but they all said the exact same thing. It's really hard to kind of differentiate because everybody looks the same and talks about the same thing. What I would say just advice-wise before I kind of show you anything, and then I'll shut up and I want you to peg me with questions, but really the mindset you should be thinking about is, in my opinion, is every retirement advisor I talk to feels like they're overwhelmed, they're stressed out, they're overworked, they're feeling like there's fee compression, there's feeling like, and I dealt with some of this as well, clients don't really value what you do, or they're not that engaged. They go to a committee meeting and you present some PDFs and that's kind of, you kind of shake hands and then you do it the next quarter, or you do it 6 months from now. And what I would tell you is I think as an industry, what we're doing is we're really serving fast food to people. When I go to McDonald's or I go to kind of like Chick-fil-A, I'm not getting an incredible meal and experience. And it's really funny now to run these advisor RFPs and to sit in the meetings and listen to advisors present. What's really interesting and cool, frankly, is once the advisor leaves, hearing how it was perceived by committee members, what they found valuable, what they didn't find valuable. It's a very fascinating just to kind of be in the mind of the buyer. And I think what's really important as you guys, you're in such a great position because you're on the front end of your careers. You've probably learned some things maybe from people who went before you, but I would always challenge every one of you is Don't think about the way things have always been done. Think about the way to do things differently. You don't have to be better. You guys are all good. I'm sure you're all good. You don't have to necessarily be better, but you do have to be different. When everybody looks and sounds the same, it's very hard for plan sponsors to separate wheat from chaff. And then it goes back to, well, who's got the lowest fee? Um, you have to kind of change that dynamic. And the way to think about it is when I go to a fast food restaurant, what do? Like, I go in, I give them my order. It takes a couple of minutes. I pay. I don't want to pay a whole lot for it. Sometimes my order gets messed up. It's not really an experience. I don't go through Chick-fil-A. My kids would argue with this because they love Chick-fil-A, but I don't go through McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or even, frankly, Chipotle or Qdoba. And I'm like, that was the most amazing meal and experience I ever had. And I feel like what a lot of advisors do, it's like running a fast food restaurant. And I'll use Chick-fil-A as an example. You know, you're trying to do everything. You're trying to be the manager. You're trying to have some staff that you're overseeing. You've got people out in the drive-through kind of taking the order, put your credit card in. You're trying to get as many people through as fast as possible. Um, you're delivering a good meal for what it's paid. If I got to pay, like when I take my 4 kids and my wife to Chick-fil-A and I go through the drive-through, like it's like $75 now. And I'm like, I can't believe it's $75 for a chicken sandwich. What I would tell you is you begin to think about and design, begin with the end in mind, really start thinking about the experience. I would take fast food and I would compare that to anybody ever been to like Capitol Grill? Like, I love Capitol Grill. There's a great one in Baltimore. I know when I go there, I know I'm going to pay a bunch of money for it, but I know the experience is going to be great. The food's going to be really, really good. But the experience I know is going to be awesome. And you walk in and there's not a manager, trying to run around like, manage the kitchen and manage the drive-through and manage the counter. You've got a maitre d', and that maitre d' is typically super friendly, welcome you in, very good communicator, very good problem solver. Their job is to make sure you have this incredible experience. They're overseeing the staff. They know the menu really well. And then what do you have? You have a really good wait staff, right? They come in, they're dressed nicely. They have great anticipation. They give you great recommendation. They don't cook the food, but they can say, pair this steak, the tomahawk really goes with this Cabernet. They come along with their little scraper, after you've eaten, and they scrape up your crumbs, which is fantastic. And then you're going to get super high quality food. The food's going to be really, really good. And, but they've kind of outsourced the kitchen. You don't have the maitre d' that's in the kitchen, like playing, sous chef or head chef. Like what I would say is you're trying to scale and deliver a really good experience where you can charge a premium. You have to think more about delivering that, being the maitre d' and having your team and the people who work for you, have them be like really good wait staff, not spending a bunch of time preparing. Like, you want high quality food, but you shouldn't be spending a bunch of time in the kitchen cooking. That's not your highest and best use of time. What makes the best waiter, I would say, is they have incredible anticipation. I would say that's the number one thing. They anticipate needs ahead of time. And I would just say in general, what I've seen with a lot of advisors is they don't spend their time anticipating client needs, being there to be responsive. Hey, my steak's a little undercooked. Great, we're going to get back in. We're going to flash fry it for you. It's more of like they're running it back and like, put it on the grill and trying to flip it. And they're trying to kind of do everything. Like, your greatest value is your ability to welcome in prospects and clients like a maitre d' and make sure that the experience is incredible. And then your team is really about being those waiters and waitresses who can anticipate needs ahead of time and really helping, instead of just giving. Ever been to like a Cheesecake Factory? I hate Cheesecake Factory. You know why? Because the freaking menu's 18 pages long and I get totally overwhelmed when I go in and I read the menu. And so I wind up getting the same thing every time because I'm like, I'm overloaded. you need to be able to have kind of like that curated kind of menu of what we do and how we do it. And then you repeat, you rinse and repeat and do that. But you want to do it in a way that is not overwhelming people with info. But I think the real secret, this is what I tried and it worked very well. Help people understand where they are, today, if it's a new client, a new prospect. More importantly, help them understand where you want to take them. If it's an existing client, help them understand where they were, where they are today, and where you want to take them. And so my platform is really about trying to help you systematize and scale and not like do things like one-off over and over and over again, and then creating deliverables that allow you really quickly to do what I just said. Here's where you are, here's where I want to take you, or here's where you were, here's where we've come so far, but here's where we're going to take you in the future, and this is what we're managing towards. Most business owners, I'll give you an example. I mean, Ray and I had a 30-person team. I hired like our benefits broker. When they came in, I didn't want to go through, hours of stuff. When they came in, I wanted to know, okay, where are we? What are kind of our options? What do I need to be thinking about that I don't know what, I don't know what I don't know. Put me in a position to make really confident decisions and then make sure it gets done because I have a business to run. And I think that's a good, if you really put yourself in the position of your clients really thinking about like that experience. Hey, we're going to get you in. We've done the heavy lifting to make sure that we're putting you in a position to know what's important, know how to run through a decision-making framework and evaluate what you know and what you don't know, but ultimately put you in a position where you can make decisions that make you confident, see how far you've come, but also see where to go, and then kind of get you back to work. So that's my kind of tee up. I'll shut up. You guys may agree, you may disagree. That's totally fine. But in terms of like building, you can't do stuff one-off, especially for clients that don't pay you a premium to be able to do that. There's a fascination. Most advisors want to move up market. I had about 45% of my clients were under 10 million. The rest were over, and about 15% of our clients were 100 million plus. I had about 125 plans. At the end, I had about 10 clients. I'd kind of handed, everything off, but my 10 clients on average were about $85 million. I will tell you, like, everybody wants to move up market because there's a massive amount of fee compression going on right now. This $250 million plan, the advisory fees range between 60 and 80K a year. 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that'd have been 150, 200 grand. There's massive fee compression up market. Clients are super demanding. You could probably make more at Chick-fil-A. I think if I were starting a 401k consulting practice now, I would stay in that under 10 to maybe 15, but really that under $10 million market. It's totally underserved. There's a massive amount of those companies that are out there. You don't have to you're not going to get your brains beat in every day going against, spreadsheet plan sponsors who hire cap trusts because they've got $1 trillion. I think the key is how do you create the art is how do you create an experience that lets those smaller plans, they're way easier to service. They can be way more profitable if you structure them the right way. You can't serve them like they're an 80 or 100 or billion-dollar plan. But that's a great market to be in. Your ego may want to go up market, but I will tell you, your quality of life and your paycheck, you want to stay more down market. And then that's where the key, since you can't, you can't bespoke everything, that's where you have to get super systematic about what you do. So I'll shut up there. Debate me, ask questions, disagree, I'll show you some stuff in a few minutes, but what can I help you guys with? What questions do you guys have? What challenges are you dealing with? What bottlenecks do you have that you can't seem to overcome, and why? Fire away.
Josh, I think one of the things that'll kind of lead into pretty good discussions is those most recent RFPs that you sat in.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, your CapTrust, Sage Views, hubs, etc. You name them, they're all going to
yeah,
look and feel the same. They've got the same services. Everybody's rolling out PEPs, AMA, etc. What did you see as being most important in the eyes of the plan sponsor when they were going through that RFP process?
yeah. Um, so a lot of the big firms refer me in because I run a really efficient RFP process, and you know what I was always good at, and I can do now. A lot of times, plan sponsors don't know what they don't know, or they misinterpret. And this is where the art of communication comes in. They misinterpret what was said. Um, One of the most important things, and it's kind of I built it around like the way my platform works, is really trying to identify and prioritize like what is most important. Everybody's deck, I will say, like looks good. The design like it looks good, but it all says the same information. I will tell you that through those RFPs, and again, I do about 6 to 8 a year. Generally speaking, um, and it's funny you mentioned PEPs. So this is why it's so important is as an industry, we fall in love and we think we hear what the industry says, and you go to Napa and you hear this. And a lot of times advisors fall in love with certain things, and we're told like all the demand is here, and then plan sponsors don't feel that way at all. I will tell you the firms that tend to win there are the ones who've um, provide the best insights on the margin. Everybody has the same service model. They have the same stuff. I will tell you in this one, um, there was one thing CapTrust said that was really, and they haven't decided who to hire yet, but one of the things the committee, and this is just shows you how little things, the plan was with principal. CapTrust is not the incumbent. CapTrust went through in their presentation and they said, look, here's a couple of things. One, we went through your 5,500 and we identified this little issue right here. The incumbent advisor had missed it. Principal had missed it. CapTrust was like, there's this little issue here. We're happy to talk to you more. The committee, small thing, was like, wow, like they really dug in. That was valuable. The other interesting thing was CapTrust said, you're with principal, we're principal's largest advisor partner. Have you guys had any discussions about how they use float income? And the committee's like, and this was a law firm, and they actually had a very good ERISA attorney on the committee. Literally, like, no, what's float income? And so CapTrust went through, hey, here's what float income is. Here's how you use it. It's a revenue driver for principal. If you ask them for it, they will generally rebate it for you, but only if you ask them for it. And here's how you go in, and here's how you ask for it. And so that little tidbit, like when everybody looks the same, that type of insight, the committee said, the incumbent has never mentioned anything about float income to us. We didn't even know what float income is. And we didn't know that we could. And so does that make sense? Like that was a really interesting, one of the things I also did was like, I go through a matrix. And so advisors like this because I prep with them ahead of time and I'm like, look, here's I survey the committee and I go through what's important to you, highest priority, each individual committee member. Then I can come back and to advisors, I give them the roadmap. I'm like, look, these are their highest priorities. Here's what's important. Here's how the CFO, what they care about most. Here's what the HR director cares about most. When you're telling your story, focus on these things. Here's something they don't care about, Don't focus on this at all. They do not care about this. And so I kind of give them the roadmap. And sometimes advisors are really good at following kind of the playbook I give them. And then sometimes they aren't. And then they want to know, well, why didn't we win? And I'm like, because you literally talked about the things I told you not to talk about. Really identifying what's most important in that process. But I'll give you another interesting example from this one. One of the advisors, the incumbent, and I won't kind of name their name, but they have a super slick technology platform that they've built. And they demoed it. They spent most of it demoing this. And it's got AI in it. And they were hyping up like, you know, how we've got AI and we can do all of this. And I will tell you, as a tech guy, the platform looked really, really slick. And I was like, wow, I'm thinking that's really, really good. And they, you know, they said, we've got this kind of assistant and you can do this for all your participants, yada, yada, yada. They walked out of the room. The committee was like, that was awful. It was terrible. And, you know, they said like AI, like we don't want AI. Like it's like literally the advisor thought what was cool. They went in and talked about what they thought was cool. The response was super negative about what it, you know, what it looked like. People were like, oh, that's just one more app I got to log on to. And, you know, I just want to be able to kind of talk to somebody. What the client through that said, I said, what I hear you saying is you want human-led, technology-enabled. You don't want technology-led. But what do we hear in the industry? Oh, you can get these, you know, I don't know about you guys, but like there's a ton of like financial wellness platforms. The utilization sucks. Like they show well, nobody utilizes them. Or there's this idea that we can scale, that people are going to want to use AI to do their own planning. I will tell you, I think in general, the market is way behind where the advisory industry is as far as that. One of them brought up PEPs. Hey, we can do a PEP. Client hated. They said they talked about PEPs nonstop. Like we don't want to do a PEP. So my point in all of that is it's really how do you kind of assess what's important and kind of understand like what is really a high priority and then tailor the story and the narrative, you know, around what's important. I don't know if Kyle, if that makes sense, but it's kind of fascinating to sit in. I'm just kind of taking notes and I'm there and then afterwards and kind of walking them through. And then I think the thing they appreciated that I brought from my advisor days was I gave them the inside baseball afterwards. I'm like, you know why they like the technology platform's cool, but you know, the reason they lowballed their fee on the consulting side was because they charge, it was like a managed account plus tech. I was like, let's just do the math. You've got, you know, you've got $250 million in your plan. If they can capture $15 million in assets, their fee is going to be 20% higher than everybody else. And so I gave them kind of the inside baseball of, you know, and for each advisor, hey, here's what, you know, let me tell you, like, as an RIA owner, like, this is kind of what they're thinking about. And so with the client, they're like, you just gave us like kind of the inside scoop. That's what I used to do with my clients as well. I wasn't in like, hey, let's look at the standard deviation of, you know, the seventh fund we're going to talk about. It was all about strategy and strategic initiatives and imperatives and helping them understand not only what I thought they should do, but more importantly, why. This is why you should do it. This is the set of principles that we use to apply, and then trying to put them, like giving them inside baseball. Hey, here's what the, you know, here's what the industry. I'll tell you another one that, and again, you may have firms that are trying to do this, but what I will tell you from doing these in general, the industry loves this idea of the cross sell. Some clients will be up for it. I'm finding more and more plan sponsors hate the idea of having employee benefits, PNC, retirement, all with the same firm. They feel like it's going to lock them in. And that may go against some of the things like you guys may be with some of those firms. And my platform can help facilitate those. I'm not saying every client doesn't like it, but I've been surprised at how much plan sponsors start to push back on this idea. They can see, they can't put their finger on it and fully understand it, but they can sense there being this kind of like cross sell, and they don't love it. They don't, you know, they don't love it. So I would just throw that out there, that be very careful with kind of like the cross sell, even with like, there's a way to probably position it without it in a softer way. But I'm finding interesting pushback from, and again, I'm not doing 100 of these RFPs right now, but 6 to 8 is a decent sample size, and I'm hearing some consistent feedback from these plan sponsors. And then I would just say the last point that they make is like, it's just too much information. It's overwhelming. They don't know how to make sense of it. It's like the Cheesecake Factory menu. They don't know how. This isn't their business. And so it's very overwhelming. And most of them have their egos won't let them say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they'll nod their head to you like they know what you're talking about. And inside, it's like you're speaking Chinese to them. And it actually has the opposite effect. When we make things really complex or we can't break them down in a really simple manner, we think it makes us sound smart. I will tell you in general to committee members, it pushes them away. And so part of the art is how do you take complex concepts and topics and things, and how do you make them simple? Woody Guthrie, famous American musician, he said, any damn fool can make a simple thing complex, but it takes a true genius to make the complex simple. And so that would be another kind of like, how do you take all these complex topics that you've got 40 pages of materials, and how do you distill it down into a way that is simple and easy to understand and accessible? And how do you communicate that in a way? These people don't get paid more to sit on the committee. They just want to know, are things good? Like, what are we doing that we should? What are we not doing that we should? What are we doing that we shouldn't? Where do we go next? And being able to facilitate that for them. So.
No, that's good. And I kind of operate like you. I don't bring up a PowerPoint or anything like that. Usually the first 10 to 15 minutes of any presentation I do, I shut up, I listen, I ask questions. And then they tell me what's important to them. And then I'll kind of pick and choose where we focus on services that'll align with what they're looking for. And generally speaking, when they ask for a fee, I'll give them a range because it'll depend. I'm not going to be your Walmart. I'll be your Nordstrom's, right? And I'm not here to be your everyday Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
You'll get more of your, Capitol Grill or, Minneapolis Manny's type menu from me.
Yeah. That leads actually into an interesting point as well. And, I would say, sounds like you're talking on the prospecting side.
Yeah.
Great. Once you get clients, and you guys have probably experienced this, this is not a hard business. It's hard getting clients. It's a competitive market. Part of it's the inertia. Part of it's the sense of urgency. I would say, but you really, and you probably, I would say in general, the only reason you probably lose clients is one of two reasons, I would think. M&A, you've got a client, they get bought, they sit at the little kids' table at Thanksgiving, and, the parent company sits at the big table and you're sitting at the little table with them. I would say the other one is you have a new committee member who comes in, a new CFO, a new HR that has no history with you and now has a position of authority and comes in and they don't know all the thing you've done. I will tell you that in general, advisors do not do a good job. You do a lot for your clients. You do not do a good job. And this isn't you, it's just in general, reminding clients of all the great stuff you've done for them. It's kind of the iceberg effect. The Titanic sunk not because it hit the 10% of the iceberg it could see. It sunk because it hit the 90% of the iceberg below the waterline it couldn't see. And I would say in general, when you go to a client meeting, they're seeing the 10% of your iceberg, helping them understand the 90% below that they don't see in a really scalable, efficient way. You have to convince prospects hypothetically of what you're going to do to them, but you have to remind clients of what you've done for them historically in the body of work. You have to, even if it hasn't turned over, they're going to forget. They have busy lives, they have jobs. They're going to forget all the stuff you've done for them. Even more important, when you have a new decision maker who's come in who doesn't have history with you, you have to be able to very quickly and easily show them, hey, this is what the body of work that we've done, over time. And I find in general, advisors don't do a great job of being able to do that. It's not efficient. And I will pivot and show you guys some things, just a couple of features on maybe how you address both of those. But any other kind of questions or comments at this point? I don't know if this is helpful for you. You may just be like, this is some 50-year-old dude who's pontificating and whatnot.
No,
I'm
this
not
is
trying to.
I was
Go.
going to say this has been great. I think a lot of our conversations have been kind of talking about where are our books in the industry and where are we trying to seek out from a new business standpoint. So
Yeah,
hearing you talk about like sub $10 million, like having the credibility of having $100 million plan sounds nice, but as you're seeing on the RFP side of things, it's not as nice and as glamorous as a lot of people think it is. So I think the scalability and kind of talking through all of this stuff would be beneficial for us. And then whatever insights you have kind of in
yeah,
that market space from plan sponsors on, I don't think any of your RFPs are probably that small, but they could be. But
yeah.
what are you hearing from plan sponsors in that space to kind of help us to apply from a new business standpoint to try to get us some more prospects and get us in our foot in the door with more places?
Yeah, and again, having worked in both, like part of my value prop down market was because I had a good number of clients in that more kind of like 100 million plus. What we were trying to do is I was able to kind of systematize. We brought like large market consulting down market. Um, and so I do think, but I will tell you what you see in general up market is that most of those plans are buttoned up. I think part of the reason down market is so good is that there are a lot of things that you can do that nobody's ever engaged them about or had conversations. They've never gone to dinner at Capitol Grill. They've just been eating fast food because that's what the advisors they've been working with. Part of the reason it's hard to compete up market is because you can't go in with the kind of the traditional like, here's all the stuff we do. It's all table stakes. It's all kind of being done, and that's why you see these plans don't really turn over um, a whole lot up market. Usually, they don't turn over from the really good firms. What usually happens up market in the RFPs when the plan moves, it's because it was a smaller advisor who won the business, didn't have a kind of they won it a long time ago. The plan grew, they kind of grew with it, but they didn't have kind of the rest of the practice to kind of support it. It was like their biggest client. And then it's very easy for them to be able to see like, oh, we're the biggest client by far of this firm. That's where I'm seeing them turn over. When you've got a big firm and an incumbent in there, if they've done a halfway decent job, it's they have the I's dotted and the T's crossed. It's not like that down market. So let me show you a couple of things and again give you a little bit of an vision, but I think the other thing too is how you scale and systematize. So like let's start from a prospecting perspective. Is it okay if I kind of show you guys a couple of features in the platform just so you can kind of see? Kyle, we talked about like in that I would imagine you guys kind of did. This is the way I built my business was through assessments, right? So I would get a prospect. What I was trying to do is have a first meeting with them and then show enough value and demonstrate enough credibility that they'd let me do an assessment. And then I'd ask them for a bunch of info about their plan, like everybody else does. Send me your investment lineup and your 408b2. And I would create friction for them. Go gather all this information. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know where any of this stuff is. But if I could get it, I would then spend like probably 2 to 5 hours and I would do this like SWOT analysis, deep dive, go through, because and it was an effective selling process. I would come up with this really kind of like dialed in analysis of their plan. Here's what you're doing well. Here's where you've got some things that can be improved, optimized, enhanced. Here's some things you're not doing that we would come in and do. But I was spending 2 to 5 hours every single time I was doing that. And sometimes I'd win and sometimes I'd lose and sometimes it would rain. It was effective when I got people, dialed in, but I didn't win every time, but I was spending a lot of time prepping for those. So like one of the components of our platform, and again, this is what I originally built in 2011. It was huge, and I'm not going to give you all the back end, but it's a fully customizable platform. So we have this concept of what we call, I set one up for you guys just to see this, what we call dimensions. You can customize anything in the system to make it unique to you and to your philosophy. And then we have, so think about scaling your discovery process. We have this concept of like all these different dimensions. So thinking comprehensively and kind of systematically. We've got what we call question profiles, which allow you to basically set up one or more of these kind of, you can basically set up kind of, you think about what you do with the scorecard with RPAG or with the FI360 report with the FI360 score. You scorecard investments. Well, why don't you do that with all kind of the comprehensive approach that you take? That's, again, I built this for myself, the first iteration back in 2011. So I know of what I speak. But what you can do is you go in and you can build one or more. The other thing I would tell you, sorry, the other thing I would tell you is niche down. I think that is that's the most important thing you can do is really start to focus on niche markets. Being a 401k advisor is not a niche anymore. It's not a specialty. It's really dialing down, and we could have a different conversation about that. But what we allow, like you do, this is how you can scale and systematize your discovery and how you position what you do uniquely to the identified needs of a prospect. So we have this concept of a questionnaire. Don't get caught up in the dimensions, the questions, it's fully customizable. But instead of like that friction of like, hey, send us all these documents and all of this in 2 to 5 hours, like the reason I built this was I needed a way to scale that faster. And so what we have is an assessment that takes a plan sponsor about 5 to 10 minutes to fill out. It's branded there, but what they do, you send them a link, you send them this link you have set up, they can go through, give you their industry, their plan type, they can go, I'm just going to put this in real quick. And then what happens is when they go through, we talk about, you don't want to make them go gather a bunch of info. It creates friction in the sales process. But now they can go through, hey, this is our record keeper. It's kind of a self-service, right? These are our assets. These are our participants. Now we're going to go to discovery. So you can have what we call discovery, like non-scoring questions and scoring. You'll see how this works. But like as an example, and this is fully customizable, but asking questions. These are all things you would probably ask in an initial meeting, but like service provider satisfaction. How are you with your record keeper? Hey, we're very satisfied. If that's the case, hey, don't be talking about like moving them to another provider. Maybe it's a bundled. I changed the question. That should actually be auditor instead of TPA. You can customize all the questions. Hey, how are you with the advisor? Hey, we're satisfied, but they're not extremely or very satisfied. So you can do like questions around, for instance, service provider satisfaction, maybe other benefits. Hey, do you offer a non-qual or a cash balance? Neither. Okay, well, maybe they could be a fit there. Emergency savings, loan repayment. Hey, maybe we've got, young employees. We're interested in that, but we're not really interested here. You can ask whatever questions you want in the system. Outsourcing, are you open to, this is maybe a PEP question. We spend more than 20 hours. So you can ask them these questions. Hey, payroll, we use ADP. I don't even know what one integration is. So you can ask questions in the discovery process to front load it. Then they go through and based on the dimensions, and you can customize this, but these are the 6 general dimensions we have in the system. They go through and, they can highlight or they can stack rank what areas are most important. If they're really happy with their provider and their provider management is number 6, don't spend a bunch of time talking about that. So they stack rank the dimensions in order of priority. And then what we do is really simple. It's going to pose a series of questions that you set up, and you can build a scoring matrix, custom to you and to your firm here. And you can create your own questions. You can use the 85 questions we have in the system. All they have to do is go through and answer the question, yes, no, unsure. We're trying to identify the yeses and nos. We're trying to uncover the unshores. Unsure is a very common answer. We get about 50 to 100 of these that come in every couple of weeks. And I will tell you, unsure is a very common answer. Either people haven't been asked the question, they don't even know what's going on. There's confusion or lack of clarity. So they can go through, answer this. It takes them about 5 to 10 minutes as they go through. This could be a great thing. You have an initial meeting. Somebody agrees to do the assessment. Hey, we're going to send you a little questionnaire. Could you take 5 to 10 minutes, fill it out? You don't have to go gather a bunch of information. So they go through, they answer the questions, and they hit submit. I must have, sorry. Looks like I missed a question. There it is. I hit submit. You can then redirect them. If you put a link in, hey, do a 15-minute, we'll share the results with you. So we're scaling that discovery process. They fill that out. Once they're in, you'll see, you get an email letting you know that they filled out the questionnaire. You can go in, you can go to the questionnaire, you can actually see, hey, here's how they answered all the different questions, right? And then what you do is you build what we call a strategic assessment. So in a couple of minutes now, I can go in, I find that plan, I'm going to hit create. The way it works is it's around this concept of strengths and opportunities. So any questions they answer yes are going to have a strength tied to it. And they're going to get the points that you set up in your scorecard and scoring system for that. Any questions that are no or unsure, they get 0 points. It shows up as an opportunity. We have like this customized game plan that shows kind of like, you know, content. You don't have to put that. Actually, on our production side, this is turned off by default, but you could always, if you wanted to add some commentary, you could add some commentary. Hey, this is what we would recommend based on one of the opportunities and why we would recommend it. It's all regulatory guidance, case law, academic research, or industry best practice. What you can also do is highlight certain priorities. Like these are like next best steps. Usually you're going to want to do that in a, you know, maybe their top 2 or 3 areas. I can go through, I can see all this different stuff that's in here. I'm good to go. Now I hit preview with a grade. It's going to show what their grade is and their score and kind of give you this deliverable. I can hit finalize. I can go in, maybe I want top priorities, and you know, maybe I want to show the top 2 things that are important to them and you know what they're doing. I hit finalize, and what it's going to do in a couple of minutes is it's going to generate a deliverable that is now dialed into basically how the powers that they've kind of answered it for themselves. So I've got this, you know, your color, your logo, but now it's got the 6 dimensions in their order of priority. It's got their score and their grade based on how they answered the questions. You can show them, hey, here's how you're doing in these different areas. You can highlight priorities. Hey, these are the kind of like next best recommendations based on what we saw. We're gonna give you a vision of where we're gonna take you over time, but like next best step, you know, through our onboarding process, we want to generate, you know, we want to deal with these kind of 5 things. You can, if you want, you can show them like, hey, in your top 2 areas, like this is what you're doing well, but here are opportunities to improve, enhance, optimize. You're giving this vision to them of not only where they are today, but where you want to start to take them, you know, over time. And then what's really cool, it becomes a really good annual kind of like stewardship report for them once they become a client, where let's say we're getting ready for our annual review and now we've gone in and, you know, we've kind of addressed the different issues that we said. And now we want to knock out, you know, maybe we want to knock out a couple of these. We're going to focus on some priorities here, you know, let's say. And I go through and you'll see now it's going to show you kind of that, you know, that score history as you go through. And again, I could go now and I can show, hey, now I want to show the score history as well. But it's this iterative process of showing them kind of where they've been and where you want to take them over time. So now we archive the old score and now we bring through the new score. So it's kind of an annual review in a simple way. Hey, here's where you are. Here's your score and your grade now. Here's how we've improved these areas. You know, when we started, you were a 29, now you're a 50. Here's the next set of priorities. Since we got the other 5 and we got you from a 29 to a 50, here's what we want to focus on next. And we're going to focus on investment process. And here are, you know, the things here, and maybe here's kind of a little bit of an action plan with some content. Why is it important to make sure that, does that make sense? Do you guys see kind of how this is just one component, but does it make sense in terms of like making the complex simple and being able to scale discovery and an assessment, and then being able to kind of show clients how they visually kind of in a gamified way made progress? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd be interested from a follow-up standpoint, because it feels like it's asking a lot of the prospect to kind of opt into all of that stuff. Do any of your advisors, or do you see it often where advisors maybe walk through that assessment with the prospect in the first meeting, and then kind of try to have the second meeting be the game plan forward and kind of your insights?
You can use it any way you did. What I really tried to do, I used it as a qualifier when I had prospects. I typically tried to get them to fill it out ahead of time. They did about 55% of the time. The other 50% of the time they didn't. I still had the first meeting, and my goal was to get them to, hey, do this assessment. You could hop online with them and walk them through if you want from that perspective. I think the power is them answering the questions themselves. Some advisors, what they do is they go in, they ask the questions, and then they come back and build it out. But I do think there is power in, you know, helping them kind of the self-discovery, because they know like, oh, I answered no to a bunch of these questions. Like, it helps in the discovery. So you can use it whatever way you want. You could hop on Zoom and be like, hey, let's just kind of walk through. You could make it a 10-question questionnaire if you wanted, or a 12. You can make it as short, as long as you want. You can set those links up inbound so you could put it on your website. Hey, just go fill this out instead of, there's different ways that you can use it. One of the other things I want to show you that goes with this, and again, there's a lot of different things we do within this platform, but you know, so we do like, you know, you can do meeting minutes in about 3 minutes. We have a really good meeting minutes tool that's really popular. One of the things we've launched recently that's really, really cool are kind of 2 of our most popular features are our minutes, and then what we call accomplishments. And so we recently launched, and this is we've seen a massive spike in utilization, a task management component, and we tie some things. You can build tasks out of minutes, or if you think about from a systematic standpoint, I know we're running a little low on time, but I do want to show you this real quick just to kind of see what it looks like. We give you out of the box, we categorize everything. So we have categories that we give you out of the box, but you can customize it. So there's a lot of categories. You can create your own, you can delete, you can do whatever you want, but it categorizes. We have these categories for things. And then we have what we call task text and accomplishment text. Different purposes. The task is what it creates systematically for you so that you can stay organized. This is what we need to do. The accomplishment, if you've got accomplishment text that corresponds to a task, this is what automatically is going to show up on our accomplishments report to a client. So remember when I talked about really showing that body of work. So you can customize tasks. We give you a bunch out of the box. You can create your own. So what you do is you go in and you create, you know, a category, you can create a task and or an accomplishment. But what's cool is, let's say I've got, you know, just to kind of stay organized and consistent, you know, let's say that, you know, VCI prospect is a client now. And let's say, you know, I need to do a couple of things. I need to run a fee benchmarking report. So it's systematic. You're not like typing this out. It's in there. But then we also have an accomplishment tied to it. So I can apply this. I give it a due date, I give it a priority, I can assign me or somebody on my team with that. And when I do that, it's going to go into the system. Now I can do maybe a couple of other ones. So let's just say we also need to, you know, let's say we need to draft minutes from the meeting minute or from the meeting that we just did. And you can do this through minutes as well, which is nice. You don't have to, you can put them in minutes, or you can put them in this way. And then let's just say I'm going to add one more so you can kind of see how this works. But again, systematically, and then being able to show clients what you've done maybe we need to, you know, I'm just going to say, levelized revenue sharing that, we need to go in there and we need to do that. And here. So now I have 3 tasks. So I can go in here, I can put notes and do all that. But what happens is when I get that done, it's going to go to completed. I can see what's been completed. Let's say we do this and we do this. What automatically happens is, and again, this is where you start to think about system and scale. And you can ask Ryan, like, how this works. What I can do now when I do those things, I can go through and it will show in my accomplishments section, these were the things I did and these were the dates that it was done. The tag is if you did it through a task, but I could always just manually add, maybe I want to go in and we did one-to-one meetings and I want to go in and we did them on, April 1 and we did 17 one-to-one meetings. I don't have to do it through a task. I can add it manually and you'll see there's, did it save it or, sorry. I can save it in here, but now, again, reporting, short to the point. And this is only a couple of things the system does. But let's say that new CFO comes in or I go back to that committee. I can now, with the click of a couple of buttons, create, and this is something I used to do for my clients manually before I built it into the system. I used to do manually. Every year I would show them, I put together some manual slides of accomplishments and milestones. The fact that we've tied it to make you more efficient into tasks and accomplishments, but now I have this great kind of simple deliverable to be able to go back. Hey, in 2025, we benchmarked your plan fees, here, we levelized your revenue sharing, whatever you have in there. Hey, we had a committee meeting and we provided minutes as a follow-up. And then, we did 17 one-to-ones on site with your team on April 1. And as you complete the tasks or you add the accomplishments manually, it builds out this deliverable to be able to go back and show clients. Another great example, let's say the HR person has an issue and calls you up and you got to step in and deal with the record keeper or the TPA and you spend 3 hours helping them work through an issue and they love you, but they haven't socialized it back to the rest of the committee or to the business owner or whoever you're dealing with. And so it's like you're Superman and HR thinks you're Superman, but the rest of the committee thinks you're Clark Kent, working for the Daily Bugle because they don't know the stuff that you've done. And so this is a really powerful way to engage committees and say, hey, look at everything we've accomplished together. And also be able to demonstrate, your value. Maybe you need to go ask for a fee increase. Are you just going to go in and be like, hey, we need to increase our fees? Or can you go in with kind of social proof? Hey, here's everything we did this past year. We'd love to, just so we can continue to, invest in the team and do more for you. Like we need to, increase our fees by 5% or $2,000 or whatever it is. And kind of here's the proof point for why we earn that fee increase, if that makes sense. So those are just a couple of the things. The scalability with tasks and accomplishments and doing it out of minutes as well will just save you so much time. And then we've got a bunch of different stuff within the platform where you can, we're getting ready to launch a really cool AI where you can drop an adoption agreement in and it'll basically fill out kind of like your plan features. That scoring report, it's great as a prospecting tool to scale your discovery and then your presentation of the value that you can deliver. It's a great annual stewardship, review of like, these were the strategic priorities that we accomplished. There's a bunch of other stuff in here, but, I'll kind of stop there. I know we're kind of at the end, but I wanted you to at least see, what some of the platform does and how it makes you more efficient. You want to scale efficiently. You want to grow profitably. And, my platform is really good. The information is kind of short and to the point. It's not like 80 pages. And it really allows you to kind of in your brand showcase your value and what you do. So I'll stop there. Questions, comments, thoughts. Love it, hate it. It's okay if you hate it. Not going to hurt my feelings. I got a big ego.
Yeah, it looked like there's some really helpful tools on there. There's definitely a lot to chew on. That was great. One question I had just regarding some of the conversations you've had with committees, and you talked about pooled plans a little bit earlier. What's the general consensus with the pooled plans as you talk with committees? Is it kind of like we're not as interested, or is there any kind of genuine interest at a firm level? It seems to be something like, hey, there's these plug and play types of plans, and I'm like, I don't really know if that's how committees are looking at them, but I'm just curious in your insights on that.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I see a use case for PEPs. I really do. I think, again, as you're thinking about building your advisory practice, what you want to do, whether it be through solutions or through tech, is you want to build a really good toolbox for yourself, right? One of my hobbies is woodworking. I've got an awesome shop and I've got all kinds of different tools. And some tools I use a lot, and some tools are really like for very specific jobs. I don't have like one screwdriver, and I try to use it. If you've ever tried to like unscrew a Phillips head screw with tool in the toolbox. I think a lot of the advisors who are out there that have PEPs is like, and there are ones that are out there that they're like, the whole industry is going this way. I don't have a huge sample size. I think they're a good fit in the right places. I think they get oversold a lot. I have seen in general, I think plans have been a little bit more resistant. An advisor will get one plan that'll adopt something and they'll be like, everybody wants to do this. I would just tell you, like, I think you have to tread carefully when you're introducing new things. Another one is guaranteed income, kind of like PEPs. The market is so early. Advisors in the industry are jacked up about guaranteed income. I will tell you that I see plan sponsors are pretty hesitant about moving. I think that industry is going to mature a lot later. You guys you haven't been in the industry, I think, probably as long, but like when auto features came out in 2006, 2007, they didn't get adopted really, really quickly. And then when they did, it was just dipping the toe in the water. You had a lot of companies that are like, we'll auto enroll at 1% or 3%. Like, it wasn't until probably the last 5 years that, generally speaking, people are adopting like a 6%, default. Or my clients adopted it early because I pushed them on it early because I believed in it. But, doing sweep projects or a QDIA re-enroll. Like these are all awesome strategies. I will just tell you, it took a while for the market to really be ready for them. I think that's going to be the case probably from a PEP standpoint. I think maybe, and again, you get arguments on this. Some of the bigger plans are like, yeah, we like this, but I still see a lot of and again, I don't have a huge sample size with plan sponsors, but the ones I've talked to are kind of like, we like having control kind of over our plan. And so this idea of like, we give it up, I know the administrative and there's some benefits to it, but I just think I think you just have to assess better. You have to find out, maybe somebody's maybe they just went through a plan correction or, a VCP and they had a lot of operational issues. They may be more primed to it. If they haven't, maybe they're not. A lot of it is just trying to like do test balloons to find out, hey, is this something you're interested in? And then not trying to strong arm people into a solution that they're not yet ready for. You may get them there over time, but there's certain things they'll adopt quickly. There are other things. And that's what I would say too, is part of our platform is tackle the low hanging fruit that's easy early, build momentum, and then tackle the bigger projects down the road. If you try to tackle the big projects like right out of the gate, there's a lot of stuff that can go haywire. So I think you should always be pushing clients towards adopting best practices and keeping them ahead of the curve. But I think there's an art to basically doing really easy, low-hanging fruit where you can show value. And then once you get momentum and trust and confidence, then you can start to introduce some of the bigger projects that aren't really easy to accomplish. That would just be my 2 cents. Having done it for a long time and seeing it work and just seeing in general, I think advisors sometimes get caught up in this, that it sounds the hard things that sound super simple, And then you get into them and things you don't know what directions it's going to go. You have to build confidence and trust and momentum. Once you do that and you have the flywheel going with a client, it gets easier to get them to like do the big changes because you've got a track record with them and you've navigated them through that. So that would be, again, that's part of the, the science is implementing the big projects. The art is like how you get people there and then how you communicate what has been done. And, this is, investment due diligence. It's science. It's easy. Like think about it's really about being an artist. That this business is all about the art of communication, the art of motivation, the art of showing complex things in a really simple way that people go, oh, I get it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. And I've made a huge amount of mistakes over my time. Like I had a lot of success and I got a lot of things right. And I made a bunch of mistakes too. I didn't tend to make them over and over and over again. That's my challenge to you guys too is don't be afraid to try new things with your clients. Not all of them will work, but really think about, like I viewed myself as like a scientist. I'd have a hypothesis. I'd create a little experiment to do something. And my whole goal was like build the experiment, test the experiment, validate. And what happened over time, I had my clients well ahead of the curve. Some of the stuff I tried didn't work. And then I would ask clients, what did you think? We didn't love that. Okay, I'm not going to do it again that way, or maybe I won't do it at all. But the things that really did work, then I was like, ooh, if it worked for them, now I can kind of scale that. So I would really challenge you guys as you're working with clients is run just experiments, try new things, try them in a different way, see what works, validate what works, identify what doesn't. If something doesn't work, it doesn't mean you have to scrap it. Maybe you just have to like turn it a quarter turn. Maybe you try something, it blows up. Don't be afraid to fail, but always be pushing to do new things. And you want your clients to hear about things from you first. Worst thing you want is a client to call you up and be like, hey, are we doing this? Or why aren't we doing that? What that means is they probably heard about it from somebody else. And then you get put on the defensive. So my whole philosophy was I was always going to talk about things. My clients were going to hear about new innovations, new strategies, new industry data, best practices. For me, first, I was going to play offense rather than defense. And a lot of times it would be like, hey, here's an emerging thing. My advice is we don't do it quite yet. Let's let the market mature a little bit. Let's let the solutions mature a little bit. Because last thing we want to do is be an early adopter of something or like bleeding edge and then get stuck. And so, but I was still having the conversation with them ahead of time. That would be a piece of advice that I'd have for you as well. And if anyone of you want to see a deeper dive of the platform, happy to. If not, no harm, no foul. But I do want you to know, like, there are some new cool platforms that are coming out there. It's not just the, and it's not an either or. You don't have to use like just one platform. You can have multiple tools in your toolbox, but we are working hard to keep innovating and building some modern stuff that helps you scale efficiently and grow profitably.
Yeah, Josh, really appreciate you working through all that stuff and kind of just giving us a bird's eye view on kind of your process and what you've created and how it would benefit us potentially on applying it to our clients. So really appreciate you taking the time and kind of giving us a sneak peek behind the curtain as to what you're building over there. So
Yep, got it.
Anybody else have anything?
Josh, you going to Napa?
I will be. I've been fighting it, and then I booked yesterday. I'm like, I guess I got to go out there. But yeah, I'll be out there if you guys are out there. Yeah, I'd love to meet you. And here's what else I would say is like you've got a great study group here. Viking Cove, a lot of value with that. Whether you're interested in my platform or not, if I can ever help you, and ask Ryan. I mean, Ryan and Devin pick my brain a lot. I love the next gen. Like if I can ever help you in any way. You have questions or you want to bounce an idea. Like I said, I've kind of seen it all and I made my fair share of mistakes and I got things right. If I can ever help you guys in any way, be a sounding board for you. I love the next gen. I think you have a huge opportunity ahead of you. I have some very counter opinions on what the industry says. I think it's a great time for you guys. And if I can ever help you in any way, shape,